Every morning, my phone rings at exactly 3 a.m. It's a call I have to answer because the person on the other end is me from the future. Each time, he gives me a new, bizarre rule I have to follow just to survive the day. He tells me if I disobey, I won't live long enough to become him. I don't know what's worse, the chilling certainty in his voice, or the fact that it's a voice I recognize as my own, just shattered. It's ragged, torn at the edges by a terror I can't comprehend yet. It's a voice that has been screaming for a very, very long time. And I know, with a certainty that's colder than bone, my only goal is to never, ever sound like him. Before the call started, my life was almost aggressively normal. It was a comfortable beige, a routine so predictable I could walk it blind. I'm a data analyst working from home, a job that's all about turning the world's chaos into neat columns and predictable patterns. My apartment is a small, quiet space on the 7th floor where the loudest sound is usually the refrigerator hum. Silence was my roommate, and I was fine with that. I'd order takeout on Fridays, watch old movies on Saturdays, and get that familiar sense of dread on Sunday nights. My phone was for memes, friends, and Friday takeout. It was a tool, not a harbinger. That all changed a week ago. Tuesday. I'd gone to bed around 11, my usual time, and I remember falling asleep to the sound of rain on the window. I was having a pleasant dream, something about a beach. Then, another sound cut through it. A sharp, digital shriek that didn't belong. My ringtone. It's a dumb clip from an old cartoon, but at 3 a.m. it wasn't funny. It was grotesque. My first thought was a family emergency. My heart hammered my ribs as I fumbled for the phone, its screen a blinding white rectangle in the dark. Unknown number. My blood ran cold. That was almost worse. I swiped to answer, my voice thick with sleep and adrenaline. Hello? Silence. Just a faint electrical crackle, like a bad connection from decades ago. I said hello again, louder this time, annoyed. Then a voice came through the static, and every muscle in my body locked up. It was my voice. Unmistakably mine. Same pitch, same rhythm. But it was wrecked. It was a whisper that scraped its way out of a throat raw with fear. Listen to me. It rasped, the words tight, urgent. Listen very carefully. You don't have much time. I couldn't speak. I just listened, my breath caught in my chest. Who was this? A prank? Some deep fake audio? It sounded so real, so desperate. You have to follow the rules, the voice crackled. Exactly as I say. It's the only way. There was a pause, a wet, gasping sound. Tonight, for the next 24 hours, do not turn on any lights, not one. Use only candles. Do you understand? No electrical lights until I call again. I finally found my own voice, a weak tremor. Who is this? I'm you, he whispered, and the agony in that sound felt like a physical blow. I'm the you that you become if you fail. Now listen. Candles only, no lamps, no overheads, not even the fridge light. If you do, it will see you. And if it sees you, it's over. Don't make the mistake I made. The line went dead. I sat there in the suffocating dark, phone still pressed to my ear. My mind raced, scrambling for a logical explanation. A cruel prank, a crossed wire, a hallucination. But the fear felt too real, too primal. I put the phone down, plunging the room back into total blackness. My lamp was inches away. My hand screamed to flick it on, to flood the room with light and chase the shadows away. But the ragged whisper echoed in my head. If it sees you, it's over. I didn't turn on the light. Just for a minute, I told myself. Just to see what happens. I slid out of bed and navigated by memory to the kitchen junk drawer, my hands trembling as I fumbled for the emergency candles I knew were in there. I found them and a book of matches. The first match I struck snapped in my shaking fingers. The second one flared to life, a tiny, defiant sun in the oppressive dark. I lit a single candle and set it on the counter. Its small flame threw long, dancing shadows that turned my coat rack into a stooped figure with grasping arms and a stack of books into a misshapen head. I spent the rest of the night huddled in an armchair, that one candle my only companion, watching the shadows writhe until the first gray hint of dawn crept in. I told myself I was being ridiculous. A grown man scared of the dark because of a prank call. But when the sun was fully up, I felt a strange relief, like I'd passed some unspoken test. That evening, as dusk settled, I walked into the bathroom and my hand automatically went for the light switch. My fingers were a millimeter away before I froze. The voice. No electrical lights. My heart pounded. It was just for a few more hours. What could it hurt? I was being an idiot. I just needed to see. I flicked the switch. For a split second, nothing. The bulb stayed dark. I let out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. See? A prank, faulty wiring. Then I heard a sound from the living room. A low, guttural hum. It wasn't an appliance. It was organic, and it was coming from my largest window. The candle on the coffee table suddenly extinguished, plunging the apartment into darkness. The hum grew louder, a deep thrum I could feel in my teeth. And through the window, I saw it. Or its effect. The faint city light from outside was being blocked. Something vast and dark was rising past my 7th-story window, eclipsing the world. I didn't see a shape, just a consuming void, a patch of anti-stars. And as it rose, I saw a single point of light within it, a tiny, malevolent red eye. For one terrifying moment, it felt like it was looking right at me, right into my bathroom, where I stood bathed in the illegal glow of a light I wasn't supposed to turn on. I've never moved so fast in my life. I didn't think, I just lunged and slapped the light switch off. The room went dark, and the hum outside instantly stopped. The void vanished. The normal city glow returned. I was left in the dark, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest, the smell of burnt ozone and something else, wet soil and decay hanging in the air. I had made a mistake. I had been seen. Or almost seen. I stumbled back to my armchair, lit another candle with hands that would not stop shaking, and waited for 3 a.m. Sleep didn't come. How could it? I spent the whole night staring at the candle, replaying the void outside my window, the thrumming sound, that red eye. The logic I'd been clinging to was shattered. This wasn't a prank. This was real. The future me wasn't lying. I'd survived my first day by sheer dumb luck. I had disobeyed, and for a terrifying second, I'd brushed up against the consequence. The hours leading to 3 a.m. were the longest of my life. The digital clock on my cable box, one of the few lights I couldn't kill, ticked over with agonizing slowness. 2:58, 2:59. I watched my phone on the coffee table like it was a venomous snake. I knew it would ring. It felt like a law of physics. As the clock flipped to 3 o'clock, the screen lit up. Unknown number. My ringtone didn't even have a chance to start. I snatched the phone and answered. "I'm here," I whispered, my voice hoarse. The static returned, louder, angrier. Then his voice, my voice, came through, even weaker than before. "You were careless," he rasped. It was an accusation. "You almost got caught. You flicked the switch." Ice shot through my veins. How could you know?" A dry, rattling sound might have been a laugh. "I know because I remember it. I remember the hum, the red eye. I'm living with the consequences of every mistake you're about to make. Do not test the rules. Ever." He took another awful, shuddering breath. "You survived. Good. Now, for today, the new rule." I waited, clutching the phone so hard my knuckles were white. "Today," the voice crackled, "you must not acknowledge any reflection of yourself. If you see one even by accident, you must immediately close your eyes, cover your face, and count aloud to 100. Don't stop counting for any reason. Don't open your eyes until you hit 100. Do this, or the thing in the reflection will take your place." The line went dead. No reflections. It sounded like something from a fairy tale. How was I supposed to do that? My apartment wasn't a hall of mirrors, but reflections are everywhere once you start thinking about it. The TV screen, the glass on picture frames, the dark screens of my phone and laptop, the windows, and of course, the bathroom mirror. My first act was a grim pilgrimage through my home. I took the sheets from my bed and draped them over the TV and my computer monitor. I turned framed pictures to the wall. The bathroom was the biggest problem. The mirror over the sink was bolted down. I ended up taping a black trash bag over it. The plastic crinkled as I smoothed it down, making my apartment look like a madman's den. Maybe that's what I was becoming. The day was a nightmare of vigilance. I walked with my gaze fixed on the floor, avoiding the windows. I ate a cold sandwich because using the microwave meant facing the dark glass on its door. Getting a glass of water became a strategic maneuver, approaching the sink at an angle to avoid seeing myself in the chrome faucet. The psychological toll was immense. To actively avoid seeing yourself is to start losing your sense of self. I felt like a ghost in my own home, afraid of the one thing that could confirm my own existence. The isolation I once found comfortable was now a prison. Around 4 p.m., I realized I was out of coffee. A small thing, but it felt like a lifeline. I had to go to the store, just 2 blocks away. The thought of navigating a world full of car windows, storefronts, and sunglasses filled me with dread. But the caffeine addiction won. I decided to risk it. I put on a baseball cap, pulled it down low, and kept my eyes glued to the pavement. The walk was nerve-wracking. I got in the store, grabbed the coffee, and paid, without looking up, mumbling to the cashier. I was almost home free, just yards from my building's entrance. I was so focused on the cracks in the sidewalk that I didn't see the person in front of me stop. I bumped into them. "Oh, sorry," a woman's voice said. I muttered an apology, still looking down. But as I sidestepped, my gaze flickered up for a fraction of a second. I saw it. Across the street, in the large window of a boutique, I saw my reflection. It was me, Baseball cap, jacket, bag of coffee. But something was wrong. The figure in the glass wasn't looking at the ground. It was looking directly at me, and it was smiling. It was a huge, unnatural grin, a predator's baring of teeth that had no business being on my face. Its eyes were dark, hollow, and as I watched, frozen, its head began to tilt, slowly, mechanically, to one side. The thing in the reflection will take your place. The warning screamed in my head. I didn't hesitate. I slammed my eyes shut, clamped my hands over my face, and yelled, 1, right there on the sidewalk. 2, 3, 4. I kept counting, my voice loud and shaking. I could feel people staring. I probably looked like I was having a breakdown. I didn't care. I felt a coldness spread through the air, a feeling of intense scrutiny, like the gaze from the window was trying to burn through my eyelids. 56, 57. A hand touched my shoulder. "Sir, are you all right?" a man asked. "Don't stop counting for any reason," my future self had said. 91, 92. I shouted, shrugging the hand off. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't stop. The cold feeling began to recede. 98, 99, 100. I finished, my voice raw. I stood there for a moment, hands still pressed to my face, heart galloping. Slowly, I lowered my hands and opened my eyes. The concerned man was gone. The sidewalk was empty. I risked a glance across the street. The boutique window showed only the street and the cars. No smiling figure. Nothing. I scrambled into my building and didn't look back. The ghost of that horrific smile burned into my memory. Living by the rules was becoming its own horrifying routine. Wake up, survive. Wait in terror for the next rule. The first two were already stacked. My apartment was a dark cavern of draped furniture and blacked-out mirrors. I moved like a furtive creature, head down. The weight of it all was crushing. I was a prisoner in my own life, sentenced by my future self for a crime I hadn't committed yet. The third night, the dread was a physical presence. I just sat in the armchair, watching the candle, and waited. This time, when unknown number flashed on the screen, my hand was already there. The static was thick. It took a few seconds for the voice to break through, and when it did, it was barely a whisper. "You saw it, didn't you?" he breathed. "In the window." It smiled. "Yes," I croaked. "It knows you're there now," the voice crackled. "It's watching, waiting for you to fail. They all are." A long pause filled with static and what sounded like distant weeping. "The new rule. This is important. It will feel cruel, but you must obey. You cannot speak to any of your neighbors. If they speak to you, even say hello, you must act as if you cannot see or hear them. Don't acknowledge them in any way. Walk away. They are not what they seem anymore. Not to you." "What do you mean?" I asked, but the line was already dead. No speaking to my neighbors seemed easier than the others. I barely interacted with them anyway, just polite nods. Mrs. Gable in 7B who commented on the weather. Mr. Henderson in 7D who was always struggling with groceries. Harmless. Now, forbidden. The day passed. I stayed inside. The silence was absolute, broken only by the building's normal sounds. Footsteps, the elevator ding, a muffled TV. Every sound felt like a threat. Late in the afternoon, I smelled smoke. Then the fire alarm went off, a deafening shriek that ripped through my quiet dread. Building policy. When the alarm sounds, You evacuate, immediately. Panic flared. I had to go into the hallway, with my neighbors. I grabbed my keys, my heart pounding, and threw open my door. The hall was already filling with people. "Another false alarm, I bet," a voice said behind me. It was Mr. Henderson from 7D. He gave me a weary smile. "Happens every few months." The rule screamed in my head. Do not acknowledge them. It felt insane, cruel. Mr. Henderson was just a nice old man, but the memory of the smiling reflection was stronger than my social conditioning. I turned my back on him without a word and started walking towards the stairwell. "Hey," he called after me, his voice confused. "Everything okay, son?" I kept walking, feeling his eyes on my back. I could feel Mrs. Gable watching, too, a look of concern on her face. I ignored them all, pushed into the stairwell, and started down the 7 flights, feeling like a monster. We all gathered on the street. The fire department arrived, gave the all clear. A pan left on a stove. As we were allowed back in, I tried to slip through the crowd. But Mrs. Gable saw me. "Young man," she said, her voice kind, her face etched with worry. "Are you all right? You seemed unwell." You completely ignored poor Mr. Henderson. I looked straight ahead, through her, as if she were made of glass, and kept walking toward the elevator. Her kind face crumpled into hurt and confusion. I stepped into the empty elevator alone and jabbed the button for my floor. The doors slid shut, hiding her wounded expression. I leaned against the elevator wall, trembling with shame. What was this doing to me? Back in my apartment, I went to the window. I needed to see the world return to normal. Most people were gone, back inside, but not everyone. A few figures lingered on the sidewalk, and my blood turned to ice. It was Mr. Henderson and Mrs. Gable. They were standing together across the street, not talking, just standing there, side by side, perfectly still. And they were both looking up, directly at my window. As I watched, a third person joined them, then a fourth. One by one, a small crowd of my neighbors assembled on the sidewalk, all standing in eerie stillness, all staring up at my apartment. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was their faces. Even from 7 stories up, their faces looked wrong. The angles were off, the shadows in the fading light making their eyes look like deep, empty sockets. Sunken, not human. The rule wasn't to protect me from being rude. It was to stop them from knowing I could see them for what they really were. And now, they knew. I stumbled back from the window, gasping for breath. I was marked. They were watching. And I had to wait until 3 a.m. to find out how much worse it could possibly get. The image of my neighbors standing like silent, accusatory statues haunted me. I spent the night huddled in the middle of my living room, feeling like a cornered animal. The rules were compounding. I was a man living in perpetual darkness, unable to see his own face. And now, watched by neighbors who were something else entirely. The 4th call came. I answered with something close to gratitude. It was my only guide. The static was a roar. The voice, when it came, was a desperate gasp. "They know about you," he wheezed. "You saw them, pointing. They're waiting for you to come out. They're patient." "What are they?" I trembled. "Doesn't matter," he rasped. "Just don't let them in." Which brings us to today. Before sunset, Place a glass of salt water on the floor directly in front of your front door, and another in front of the balcony door. After you do this, you cannot open either door for any reason until sunrise. It's a barrier. It's all that will keep them out. The line went dead. Salt water. Something out of folklore. My life was now governed by folklore, and I had no choice but to believe. As the afternoon light began to fade, I prepared the 2 glasses. My hands shook as I carried the first to the front door and placed it on the floor, a pathetic-looking guardian. I did the same at the sliding glass door to my balcony. I took one last look outside as the sun dipped below the horizon, then locked the door and drew the curtains tight. I was locked in, or they were locked out. Night fell, darker and quieter than ever. I lit my single candle. I avoided my non-existent reflection. I was a model prisoner. The hours ticked by. 10 o'clock, 11, midnight. Then, around 1 a.m., I heard it. A scratching sound. From the balcony, a slow, deliberate scrape, scrape, scrape against the glass. It wasn't a tree branch. It was methodical. The sound of a long, hard fingernail being dragged down the glass over and over. I froze, blood draining from my face. The scratching continued, a maddening, persistent sound. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I held my breath. A new sound began. A whisper from the other side of the door, wet and gurgling. "Let me in," it whispered. "It's so cold. I just want to come in." The voice was distorted, but there was a faint, horrifying familiarity. It sounded a little like Mrs. Gable. I scrambled backward, hand over my mouth to stifle a scream. The whispering stopped. Then the door handle began to rattle, gently at first, then violently. Something was testing the lock. The metal strained. I was sure it would break. Then a hiss, a sharp, angry sound like water hitting a hot pan. It was followed by a wet, sickening shriek of pain. The rattling stopped. I heard a heavy thud on the balcony floor and then utter silence. I stayed on the floor, trembling, for what felt like an hour. Slowly, I crawled to the front of the apartment and pressed my ear against the cold wood of the door. Nothing. Then the scratching began there, too. And a whisper, this time with the faint cadence of Mr. Henderson's voice. "Son, are you in there? Just open the door, let's talk." I squeezed my eyes shut, picturing the tiny glass of salt water. The handle began to rattle. I heard the same angry hiss, the same pained, gurgling cry, the same thud. Then silence. They had tried both doors. Both times they had been repelled. The rule had worked. I spent the rest of the night with my back against the far wall, equidistant from both doors, knowing that they were no longer just watching. They were actively trying to get in. And I had 2 hours until my next call. Day 5, day 6. The calls kept coming. The rules grew stranger, more invasive, layering on top of one another into a matrix of psychological torture. The voice on the phone was deteriorating. It was now just a series of pained, static, choked gasps. Rule 5 was, you must retrace your steps, exactly, every time you leave a room. This turned my small apartment into an impossible labyrinth. A trip to the bathroom became a 10-minute ordeal of forward and backward motion. I felt like a bug in a jar, pacing out the geometry of my confinement. Rule 6 was delivered in a voice so weak it was barely audible. No cooked food, nothing heated. It draws them. The warmth. My diet was now cold sandwiches and raw vegetables. I was growing gaunt, pale from the lack of light, my eyes wide and dark. My world was the dim, candle-lit space of my apartment. My reality was a list of rules. No electrical lights, no reflections, no acknowledging neighbors. Salt water at the doors, no opening them at night. Retrace every step, no heated food. I'd lost my job. My friends had stopped calling. The isolation was total. My only companion was the ever-present low-level dread. On the evening of the 6th day, something inside me fractured. I was performing the backward ritual out of the kitchen when I saw the black trash bag taped over the bathroom mirror. A wave of hot rebellion surged through me. What was the point? This wasn't living. It was an elaborate slow-motion suicide. For what? To survive long enough to become the pathetic creature on the phone? To live this half-life for years until I was the one making the calls? The promise wasn't life. It was a curse. And the voice on the phone, was it even me? How did I know? It could be the entity itself, playing some long, sadistic game. I needed proof of what happens when you break a rule. I had to know if the consequence was real. I stopped my ritual shuffle. A small act, but it felt monumental. I stood in the middle of the hallway, off my path. Nothing happened. My heart began to pound. I was going to break a real one, deliberately. I couldn't open the door. The memory of the hissing was too visceral. I couldn't talk to my neighbors. But the reflections, that was a personal rule, an internal one. The thing in the reflection will take your place. What did that even mean? I needed to see myself, to remember who I was before this began. I walked to the bathroom. My steps were heavy, deliberate. I didn't retrace them. I stood before the black plastic bag. My hand was shaking, not with fear, but with a strange, exhilarating purpose. This was my choice. Maybe my last one, but it was mine. I took a deep breath. With a single, sharp motion, I tore the trash bag from the mirror. And I looked. For the first few seconds, there was only relief. It was just me, my own face, lit by the flickering candle. Pale, yes. Haunted eyes, ringed with dark circles. But it was me. The scar above my left eyebrow. It was my face. A shaky laugh bubbled in my chest. It was all a lie. I leaned closer, a real smile touching my lips for the first time in what felt like forever. I had won. And then, my reflection blinked. I had not. It was a tiny flutter of eyelids completely out of sync with my own. I froze, my smile gone. I stared, unblinking, into my own eyes in the mirror, and my reflection stared back. Then, slowly, horribly, its lips peeled back in a smile. The wide, predatory, unnatural grin I had seen in the shop window. I tried to step back, but my feet were nailed to the floor. I watched as the face in the mirror began to change. The skin tightened, turning ashen and translucent. Black veins spiderwebbed beneath the surface. The eyes, my eyes, sank back into the skull until they were just two black, bottomless pits. It was my face. but it was being worn by something ancient and dead. The reflection raised its hand. On my side of the glass, I was perfectly still, a prisoner in my own body. But in the mirror, the decaying version of me pressed its cracked palm against the surface from the inside, and I felt it. A searing, absolute cold clamped down on my real shoulder. An invisible, icy grip holding me in place. It was taking my place. The rule was real. This was the end. Ring. The sound was so violent in the silent apartment that it broke the paralysis. My phone. It was ringing. But it wasn't 3 a.m. It was barely 9 p.m. The grip on my shoulder tightened. The thing in the mirror opened its mouth, a low, guttural clicking sound coming from its throat. It was trying to pull me in. With a surge of pure animal terror, I ripped myself away, the feeling like tearing skin off ice. I stumbled backward, scrambling away from that horrifying smiling face. I crawled to my shrieking phone on the coffee table. I didn't look at the screen. I just answered. "Hello?" I screamed. And a voice answered. Not the weak, gasping whisper of my future self. It was my own voice. Strong, clear, and utterly panicked. It was me, from a few seconds in the future. "Don't look in the mirror!" My own voice screamed from the phone. "It's a trick. That's how it gets in. It replaces you. Whatever you do, don't look." I was on the floor, phone to my ear, listening to myself warn me about what I had just done. A loop. The phone call wasn't from the distant future. It was immediate. Then through the phone, I heard another sound. My own voice, the one on the phone, suddenly choked. "Oh God," it sputtered. "It's got me, it's..." The call ended in a sickening, static-filled crunch. I stared at the dead phone, my mind reeling. The calls, the rules. The man on the phone wasn't a version of me who had survived for years. He was the version of me who had failed. The one who looked in the mirror, who was taken. And in his last repeating moments, he was calling back, not from the future, but from his own past, my present. He wasn't teaching me how to live like him. He was teaching me how to not die like him. Each call was him reliving his own last day, trying to warn the version of himself from the day before. The whole thing was a desperate, cascading message sent back through time, from a chain of dead men. I'm sitting here in the dark now. The candle is burned low. I push the bathroom door shut. I don't know what's in there, in the mirror, and I don't want to. The warning from my own dying voice came just in time. I looked, but I got away. I wasn't replaced. Which means I survived today. Which means tomorrow morning at exactly 3 a.m. I will have to pick up the phone. And with a ragged, torn voice, I'll have to tell a younger, more naive version of myself the next rule. A rule I don't even know yet. The horror of my situation is crystal clear now. It's not just about survival. It's about predestination. I'm part of the chain now. I am destined to become the desperate whispering man on the phone. My only goal was to never sound like him. But now I see there is no escape. I will live, day by day, only to become the herald of my own doom for the man I used to be. The calls are a ghost story, told by me, to me, about me. And the story always ends the same way. The question that haunts me now is not what the next rule will be. It's what happens when I run out of rules to give. What happens on the last day when the loop finally closes and there are no more warnings to send. I'm living on borrowed time, and the debt is being paid by my own ghost. Soon it will be my turn to pay it forward. The sun is coming up. I have a few hours of peace. A few hours before I have to figure out how to survive today and how to warn yesterday. If you want to know what the next rule is, if you want to know what happens when I have to make the call, maybe subscribe. Maybe if you listen closely enough, you'll hear the phone ringing too.